All right, so today we're diving into something pretty cool.
Yeah.
Open source physics,
OSP.
OSP, yeah, you got it. And it's uh, basically a way to use these interactive simulations
Hmm.
to make physics a little bit more engaging, a
Yeah.
little more hands-on.
It's really fascinating to see how technology can bring those complex concepts to life,
Exactly right.
allowing students to experiment and explore in ways that we just couldn't do before.
Yeah, and for this deep dive, we're focusing on some really interesting research
Okay.
coming out of Singapore.
Nice.
A team at the National Institute of Education there,
Hmm.
they've been studying how teachers are using these OSP simulations in their classrooms.
Cool.
We've got a whole stack of research papers, workshop materials, and even a conference presentation from them.
Wow. They really went all out.
They did a really good job. And
It's great.
what I love about this is that they didn't just develop the simulations. They
Yeah.
spent 2 years.
Really deeply investigating how teachers are incorporating these into their teaching and what impact it's having on student learning.
That's great. They didn't just stop at the cool tech phase.
Right.
They actually dug deep into the real-world implementation.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
So before we get into all that,
Yeah.
for those who might not be familiar,
Sure.
can you give us a quick rundown of what open source physics actually is?
Yeah. What is open source physics?
So at its core, OSP is a collection of interactive simulations,
Okay.
mostly built using Java and JavaScript, that allows students to manipulate variables and see the effects on a system.
Okay.
You're probably already familiar with the basic idea of simulations,
All right.
but what makes these OSP tools particularly powerful is the level of control they offer.
Okay.
We're talking about the ability to adjust specific parameters like gravity
Mm-hmm.
or friction, and then immediately observe how those changes impact the outcome of the simulation.
So it's like a virtual physics lab.
Yeah, where you can get your hands dirty, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
The study focuses specifically on two examples,
Okay.
Tracker and easy JavaScript simulations.
Hmm.
And these aren't just off-the-shelf tools.
Right.
They've been carefully modified to align with Singapore's secondary physics curriculum.
Oh, that's an interesting approach.
Yeah.
I could see how that would make it easier for teachers to integrate these simulations into what they're already teaching.
Yeah.
Were there any challenges in aligning those simulations so closely with the curriculum?
That's a great question,
Yeah.
and something that the researchers explored in depth.
Okay.
One of their key findings was that implementing these simulations wasn't a one-size-fits-all process.
Oh.
In fact, they identified 3 distinct modes of implementation:
Okay.
using, exploring, and withholding.
3 approaches.
Yeah.
Tell me more about those categories.
Sure.
They sound helpful for understanding how teachers are approaching this
Absolutely.
new technology.
Teachers in the using mode were essentially the early adopters.
Oh.
They attended the OSP workshops,
Ah.
saw the value right away,
Yeah,
and started using the simulations in their lessons pretty much immediately.
gotcha.
They were enthusiastic about the potential
Right.
and felt confident in their ability to use the simulations effectively.
Makes sense. There are always those who are eager to jump in and try new things.
Right.
What about the exploring teachers?
Yeah, so the exploring teachers were a bit more cautious.
Okay.
They were intrigued by the simulations,
Uh,
but weren't quite ready to fully integrate them into their teaching.
Okay.
They were still trying to figure out how OSP fit into their existing teaching methods and whether it would work for all of their students.
It sounds like they were taking a more thoughtful approach,
Yeah.
really trying to understand how OSP could best serve their needs
Yeah,
and the needs of their students.
exactly.
Okay, and then you have the withholding teachers
Right.
who, for various reasons, chose not to use the simulations at all.
Yeah.
Now, I'm really curious about this group.
Okay.
What were their reservations?
It was actually a mix of things.
Okay.
Some teachers in this category preferred sticking to real-life experiments and demonstrations. They felt that hands-on experience was more valuable than working with simulations.
So a more traditional approach?
Yeah.
I can see where they're coming from.
Yeah.
There's definitely something to be said for the tangible nature of real-world experiments.
For sure.
Yeah.
But for others in the withholding group, it was more about logistical challenges.
Okay.
Things like limited access to computers or reliable internet,
Yeah.
lack of time to redesign their lessons, or just feeling overwhelmed by the prospect of integrating something new into their already packed schedules.
Those are very real barriers
Yeah,
that many teachers face,
absolutely.
especially when it comes to adopting new technologies.
Yeah.
Did the researchers dig into how these different approaches played out in the classroom?
They did. Like,
Yeah.
how did a using teacher's lesson actually look compared to an exploring teacher?
Right.
That's where their mixed methods approach comes in.
Okay.
This wasn't just a superficial survey.
Right.
They used a sophisticated approach called mixed methods, which is a fancy way of saying they looked at the data from a bunch of different angles.
Uh-huh.
They didn't just ask teachers what they thought.
Right.
They actually observed them in the classroom,
Gotcha.
analyzed the lessons they were creating, and even dug into the materials the teachers were using.
Wow.
This gave them a really comprehensive picture of how OSP was actually being used.
That's a really impressive level of detail.
It is.
It sounds like they were really committed to understanding the nuances of how these simulations were being implemented.
They were.
Wow.
And one of the things they discovered
Yeah.
was that teachers didn't necessarily stay in one mode forever.
Okay.
They could move between using, exploring, and even withholding based on their experiences.
So it's not a static categorization. Teachers could evolve their approach over time
Yeah.
as they became more comfortable with the technology and discovered what worked best for them and their students.
Exactly. It highlights the dynamic nature of how teachers adapt to new technologies. There's no one-size-fits-all approach,
Yeah.
and what works for one teacher might not work for another.
Now, let's shift gears for a moment and think about the teachers themselves.
Okay.
How did they feel about using these simulations?
Yeah.
Were they excited about the potential?
Well, like the implementation itself, their feelings were mixed.
Okay.
Generally, they had a positive view of OSP and recognized its potential for engaging students and deepening their understanding of physics.
It sounds like teachers saw some real promise in these simulations.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, were there any drawbacks or concerns that came up?
Of course, while they appreciated the benefits, they also had some valid concerns.
Okay.
One that came up repeatedly was the potential for student confusion, particularly for those who are already struggling with the material. Yeah, simulations can be a great tool.
Right.
But they do require a certain level of foundational knowledge
Right.
to really grasp what's going on.
Yeah, okay, so that makes sense.
The teachers also worried
Yeah.
about the simulations being suitable for all ability levels.
Right.
They emphasized the need for scaffolding and differentiated instruction to support students who might need extra help.
It's all about making sure that everyone can benefit from these tools, not just the students who are already excelling.
Absolutely. And then there's the perennial challenge
Yeah.
of time constraints.
Right.
Integrating new technologies often means adapting lesson plans,
Yeah.
which takes time that many teachers simply don't have.
It's the classic dilemma, so much to teach so little time.
Exactly.
Did the teachers feel adequately prepared to use these simulations effectively, or was there a sense that they needed more support?
That's another important point the study brings up. The researchers found that while teachers generally had strong content knowledge in physics, they often felt less confident in their ability to implement new teaching strategies, especially those involving technology.
It's one thing to understand the science, but quite another to know how to teach it using these new tools.
Yeah.
I imagine that could be a real hurdle for some teachers.
They called it a gap between technical knowledge,
Okay.
meaning knowing how to use the simulation software itself,
Yeah.
and pedagogical knowledge, which is knowing how to teach effectively with that software.
So a teacher might be able to navigate the interface of Tracker, for example,
Right.
but not necessarily know how to incorporate it into a lesson in a way that really enhances student learning.
Precisely. That's why the researchers proposed a solution. Teacher learning communities, or TLCs.
Oh, yeah. I was hoping you'd bring those up.
Yeah.
Creating a space where teachers can support and learn from each other
Right.
is such a crucial part of successful implementation, especially with something as potentially complex as OSP. Tell me more about how these TLCs were structured.
The idea was to provide ongoing professional development
Okay.
and create a collaborative environment where teachers could share their experiences, troubleshoot problems, and learn best practices from one another.
Right.
They could discuss lesson plans, share resources, and basically support each other through the process of integrating OSP into their teaching.
It sounds like a great idea in theory,
Yeah.
but how did it play out in reality?
Yeah.
Were the TLCs effective in addressing those challenges we talked about earlier?
Well, that's where things get a little complicated.
Sounds like we've hit a snag.
Yeah.
What kind of obstacles are we talking about? Was it a lack of interest from teachers, or were there other factors at play?
It was a combination of factors, really.
Okay.
One of the biggest hurdles was simply teacher buy-in. Many teachers already felt overwhelmed by their workload
Yeah.
and struggled to find the time to participate in TLCs on top of everything else they had going on.
I can definitely see that teaching is such a demanding profession.
It is.
And it can be hard to prioritize something that feels extra,
Yeah.
even if it's potentially beneficial in the long run.
Exactly. And even when teachers were willing to participate,
Right.
there were often logistical challenges.
Yeah.
Scheduling meetings across different schools, coordinating communication, and simply finding the time and space to connect with colleagues proved to be more difficult than anticipated.
It's a reminder that even the best laid plans can run into real-world constraints.
It is, and perhaps most importantly,
Okay.
the study found that the success of TLCs was heavily dependent on support
Yeah.
from both school leadership and the Ministry of Education.
So it wasn't enough for teachers to be willing to participate. They needed a system in place
Right.
that actively encouraged and supported that collaboration.
Exactly. School leaders played a key role
Mm-hmm.
in creating a culture that valued professional development and providing teachers with the time and resources they needed to engage in TLCs effectively. Without that support, participation dwindled, and the communities struggled to thrive.
What about the Ministry of Education? What kind of support could they provide?
The researchers suggested that the ministry could legitimize TLC participation
Okay.
by formally recognizing its importance in professional development.
Gotcha.
They could also provide funding for resources and training and work to create policies that encourage and incentivize teacher collaboration.
It sounds like a multifaceted approach is needed to really make these TLCs work. It can't just be a grassroots effort. There needs to be support from the top down as well.
That's the key takeaway. Creating a thriving community of practice requires a concerted effort from all stakeholders.
So we've talked about the nuts and bolts of OSP,
Right?
the different ways teachers approached implementation,
Uh-huh.
and the challenges and potential solutions surrounding TLCs.
Yeah.
But I want to step back for a moment and consider the bigger picture.
Okay.
What are the broader implications of this research? What can we learn from the Singapore experience?
That's an important question. This study offers some really valuable insights,
Yeah.
not just for physics education, but for anyone interested in integrating technology into teaching and learning.
Okay.
First and foremost, it highlights the incredible potential of OSP and other interactive simulations for transforming how we teach and how students learn.
It's exciting to see how technology can create these immersive learning experiences that go beyond the traditional textbook and lecture format.
Absolutely. But the study also underscores something equally important. Technology alone isn't enough. We can't just throw new tools at teachers and expect them to magically transform their classrooms.
It's about more than just providing the technology.
Yeah.
It's about providing the support, training, and resources that teachers need to use it effectively.
Precisely. It's about empowering teachers, not just equipping them.
I like that.
And those lessons are relevant far beyond Singapore. These findings have implications for educators around the world who are looking to leverage technology to create more engaging and effective learning experiences for their students.
Right.
We need to recognize that implementation is a process, not an event, and that it requires careful planning, sustained support,
Right.
and a willingness to adapt and learn along the way.
And it's a process that needs to be driven by a genuine understanding of how teachers teach and how students learn.
Yeah.
We can't just focus on the bells and whistles of the technology.
Sure.
We need to focus on how it can be used to enhance those fundamental processes.
Absolutely. And that's where research like this study from Singapore becomes so valuable.
Yeah.
It provides us with a roadmap, a set of insights and best practices that we can use to guide our own efforts
Right.
to integrate technology thoughtfully and effectively into our classrooms.
I'm curious, this study focused specifically on physics education. But I wonder, now I'm curious, the study focused specifically on physics education. But I wonder, could these OSP simulations and the strategies for implementation be applied to other subjects as well? What do you think?
That's a great question, and one that the researchers themselves raise. Think about it. Interactive simulations could be incredibly powerful in subjects like chemistry, biology, even history or literature.
Wow, yeah.
Imagine students being able to explore complex molecular structures in 3D,
Okay.
simulate ecological systems, or even interact with virtual historical environments.
Right.
The possibilities are really quite exciting.
Those are some amazing examples.
Yeah,
It really expands the potential of these simulations beyond just the STEM fields.
it does.
Yeah, it seems like any subject where visualization and interactivity could deepen understanding would be a good fit.
Exactly. The key is to adapt the simulations to the specific learning goals of each subject.
Okay.
We need to make sure they're used in a way that promotes deeper understanding, critical thinking, and problem solving, not just as a flashy replacement for traditional teaching methods.
So it's not just about replacing textbooks with cool animation.
Right.
It's about using simulations intentionally and strategically to
Exactly.
enhance the learning experience.
And it's also crucial to consider the diversity of learners and learning environments.
Right.
What works in a well-resourced classroom with high-achieving students might not translate directly to a setting with limited resources or students who face learning challenges. Accessibility and equity need to be at the forefront of our minds as we explore the potential of these technologies.
That's such an important point.
Yeah,
Technology can be a powerful tool for leveling the playing field,
for sure.
but only if we're mindful of those potential disparities and actively work to address them.
Absolutely. And that's where further research and development are needed.
Yeah.
We need to explore how to make these tools accessible to all learners,
Right.
regardless of their background abilities or the resources available to them. And we need to invest in training and support for teachers so they feel confident and prepared to use these simulations effectively in diverse settings.
It's a call to action for all of us.
Yeah.
Educators,
Yeah.
researchers, policymakers, and even technology developers. We all have a role to play in making sure these powerful tools are used to benefit all students.
I completely agree. It's an exciting time to be exploring the potential of technology in education.
Yeah.
If we can combine these innovative tools with thoughtful pedagogy, ongoing support for teachers, and a commitment to equity and accessibility,
Yeah.
I believe we can create truly transformative learning experiences for all students.
Well said. This deep dive into open source physics in Singapore have been incredibly insightful.
It has.
We've covered so much ground, from the technical details of OSP
Yeah.
to the complexities of implementation and the broader implications for education as a whole.
It's been a fascinating journey.
It has.
We've seen how OSP can bring physics to life, explored the real-world challenges teachers face in adopting new technologies,
Right.
and discussed the critical importance of collaboration and support in driving innovation.
And as always, we want to leave you with something to think about.
Okay.
We've talked a lot about the potential of OSP in physics, but what other subjects could benefit from this type of interactive learning? How can we adapt these approaches to create more engaging and equitable learning experiences for all students in all subjects?
Those are the questions we need to keep asking ourselves as we move forward.
Right?
The future of education depends on our ability to harness the power of technology while remaining grounded in the principles of good teaching and a deep commitment to student success.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into open source physics. We hope you've learned something new and are feeling inspired to explore the possibilities of technology in your own classrooms or learning environments.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in education.
And to all our listeners, thanks for tuning in. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those imaginations ignited.